Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started with the workshop. So this workshop is leveraging artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI, and statistical analysis. And we're here with the ETSU Consulting Lab.
Hi, so my name is Princess. I'm one of the statistical consultants with the Statistical Consulting Lab in the master's program in mathematical sciences.
And I'm Taylor Bowles. I am in the Applied Data Science program. And we're just two of the consultants in the Statistical Consulting Lab for this semester out of 4. So we'll be the two that will lead this workshop today. So a little bit more information about the Statistical Consulting Lab. What is it? So we're a lab that helps with statistical analysis in your thesis, any type of research project. And we're on the ETSU campus. We're located in Gilbreth Hall, room 308M. So if you are here in person, then you're already very close to our office. But if you're not as familiar, I'll try to describe it. So essentially, you'll go into Gilbert Hall to the 3rd floor, and then you'll see an office suite, and you'll either go into one of 2 doors, and whichever one you go in depends on where you'll see the directory for where to find offices on the left or the right. And so it'll point you towards the room 308M, and that's where you can find us on campus. We are generally open from 8 or 9 to 3 or 4, Monday through Friday. And we can help you through, you can make an appointment to meet in person, or we can even do like a Teams virtual appointment, or you can just walk in anytime during our office hours. And I want to point out, though, that every semester we have new consultants. A couple of us are even graduating this semester. So the hours will probably change depending on the consultants and their availability for that semester. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to make an appointment or visit us for some help. So moving on, this will kind of like be a little bit of our agenda today for the workshop. We'll go over what AI and large language models in particular are, a little bit of background and how they work. And then once we kind of go over how they work, we'll talk about the expectations and limitations of them. So that will be like good practices, bad practices for using LLMs and statistical analysis. We'll also go over the ones that you can use on campus and the ones that you cannot use on campus. And then next, we'll talk about some of the popular LLMs. So most people are already really familiar with ChatGPT, so that will be one of them. And we'll go over some alternatives. We'll talk about the pros and the cons of each of those LLMs, and some of their things that they're really good at helping with, and then their pricing as well. And then lastly, we'll go over, once you've decided which LLM you'd like to work with, some good prompting practices. So we'll go into what makes a good prompt, what doesn't make a good prompt, and then we'll go into some examples of some good prompts that you could potentially use for your own statistical analysis. So moving into AI and the LLM background information, do they have magical powers? Are they sentient? We'll discuss that. So LLMs are part of a broader field of AI, and these LLM models, or large language models, are trained on sentences, which is defined as text data from the entire internet. And so the goal of these models is to predict the next word in a sentence by finding patterns in sentence data. And so that sentence data that I'm talking about is the question that you send to the LLM for the one that you're asking for help with. So it will look at that sentence and try to find the next appropriate word in that sentence that you would expect. So like I said, the user sends ChatGPT or another large language model a question, and it returns information based on that next word modeling that was described above. There's no sentience or magic happening, but it's still really cool. And this explanation is very oversimplified. It's a lot more complicated than that, the way that these models work. And at the bottom of the PowerPoint, I'm not sure if you all can see it, but there we have a link for additional information explaining in detail how LLMs work if you'd be interested in learning more about them. But for the purposes of this workshop, we just thought it would be best to give a little bit of detail as to how they work and not go into too much to bombard you all. So we'll move on from there. So now that we know how they kind of work basically, what are some of the expectations and limitations of LLMs? And then how can we properly use them? So for LLMs like ChatGPT, you should use them for brainstorming. So let's say that you're at the beginning of your project and you're not sure where to go. Maybe you don't have your data set yet and you need help finding a data set that has very specific variables, such as maybe both numerical and non-numerical. Maybe you have your data set, but you're not sure of what type of statistical test you should use to answer your question for your statistical analysis. So just brainstorming, helping you out, helping you get a head start on your statistical analysis. You can use LLMs to double check your output. So one example for that is often when you're coding, you'll get errors in your code. And especially if you're a new programmer, in whatever language, you may not know how to move forward with those errors and how to fix them. And what you can do is you can input those errors directly into a large language model, and it can help you get down to the root of what is causing the error in your code and help you fix it. Another thing is, if you're a new programmer and you're not really familiar with the syntax, maybe you have already written the code, but you just want to double check that it's right, so that you can ask ChatGPT if that code looks right for the task that you're trying to do. And there are other ways that you can have ChatGPT check your output like that. Another popular thing that you can use ChatGPT for, and that I have used in the past, is plot interpretations. So a lot of these statistical plots, they can kind of be difficult to interpret, especially if you don't have a background in statistics and you don't really know what you're looking at. So the first thing that you should do is you should create your plot and try to interpret it yourself. See if you can see any patterns in your plot. And then once you have that, go into an LLM and ask ChatGPT to help you interpret the plot. So what does ChatGPT or an LLM see that you may not have caught from initially looking at the plot? And then another way that you can use an LLM is as a study aid. So it's ChatGPT and some of these other large language models are really good at coding. So if you're trying to learn how to code, it can help you with that. If you're using it to try to explain really complex ideas, like such as mathematics, you can use ChatGPT to help you with that. You can ask it to break it, whatever you're studying, down into something that is way more simple to understand. Sometimes these big words that you're not familiar with can throw you off in your study. You can also use it, let's say you're studying for a midterm and you have your notes already typed out. So you could upload your notes to ChatGPT and ask for it to help you build a study guide. So that's just another way. Another good use case is like translations. So let's say that in your statistical analysis, you found the perfect article to help you with answering whatever question you're interested in answering. but it's in another language. And so what you could do is you could download the article and you could ask ChatGPT to translate your article for you. Another thing that someone recently told me is that you can also use ChatGPT for translating, like if you're in another country and you don't speak the native language, you can go back and forth with another person that you're talking to, and it can help you with that. So the possibilities are kind of endless. Okay, so as far as don't use, obviously everyone knows you shouldn't use these LLMs as a replacement for your brain. You're a student and you're here to learn. And so if you're just fully relying on ChatGPT, that's not good practice because you're not going to be able to use ChatGPT or another LLM whenever you go into the workplace all the time. I mean, of course, people use it as an assistant, but not all the time. And then further, you shouldn't use it to cheat on tests or homework. You're just cheating yourself, honestly. But I will say that with assignments and things like that, sometimes it just depends on the course that you're taking because some professors will say that it's okay to use LLMs in certain ways, and others will say absolutely not. So you always need to double check your course syllabus to see what is said. You shouldn't use ChatGPT to fully write a report. I will say that I would rather read someone's writing that maybe has a few mistakes, but they wrote fully by themselves than someone's writing that they just took whatever an LLM output to them and they just copy and pasted it and claimed it as their own. Whenever someone is writing, you can tell the difference because usually when people are writing, they have a lot of like emotion behind their writing. And when you look at AI, things that have been written by AI, you don't get the same feeling from the writing. You can tell a difference. You can also tell a difference in the writing because AI doesn't write strong sentences. It often has commas in the middle of sentences where they're not needed. So that's another reason why. But to help you write a report, you can obviously still use ChatGPT for help, but I would use it as a way like to help you create an outline for a paper or to help you with organize a literature review or something like that, just to use it as a tool and not to fully rely on it again. And then the last example we have for how you shouldn't use an LLM is you shouldn't upload private or sensitive data, especially if you're working for a company and you have to sign an NDA. And then I think it's just good practice, even if we're talking about the general internet, you shouldn't be uploading anything that's private or sensitive anyway. So we'll move on. So here are some of the common statistical analysis uses for LLMs. These are some that we've just used LLMs for in the past, and people online have stated that LLMs are really useful for their statistical analysis. And so the first one is to help you find a data set when you don't already have one for your statistical analysis. Like I said, you can specify what type of data set you're looking for, and it will usually return really good options for data sets. I have in the past had experience with at least ChatGPT where sometimes it will return empty links or broken links. And so if that happens, you need to call out the LLM and say that that link was empty. Can you please resend the link or something like that? Because the more that you call out the LLM, the better it will work for you. And then another way is the suggestion of an appropriate statistical analysis test to answer whatever questions you have that you're wishing to answer with your thesis or your research project or whatever it may be. So let's say you may already have your data set and you're looking at a data set, maybe it's two data sets, you have like a pre taking a drug and a post taking a drug. 1 second. You have a pre-taking a drug and then a post-taking a drug, and you want to see if there was an effect, a significant effect from the drug, looking at both of those data sets. So you may not know where to start with your statistical analysis, like what appropriate test to use for that. And so you could prompt an LLM to suggest an appropriate test for that. And so another way is to help you understand complex terms, statistical terms, like thinking of a chi-squared formula or just some different formulas like that. You may be looking at them and you may not know how all of those terms in that formula are calculated. So you could have an LLM explain exactly how they're calculated. You could have it help you with your survey design. That's pretty straightforward. And then a big one is data pre-processing, both the coding and the implementation. So it can help you with how would you deal with missing data appropriately? How would you identify it? And then outliers as well, maybe duplicated data. It could help walk you through that and explain anything that you may not understand in that. And then following, of course, EDA on a data set so that you can get a better understanding of what your data set looks like. And then, so let's say you decided to do that paired t-test, ChatGPT recommended that that would be appropriate, and then you didn't take its word. You always want to just take it as a suggestion. You looked up a paired t-test and you saw that that actually would be a great test to help you answer your question for your test or your analysis. And so you went with that. And you did it, but you got the output and you don't know how to interpret the output at all. So what you can do is you can upload the output from that paired t-test, and ChatGPT can help walk you through what the output means in relation to the question that you're asking. So then from that output that you just got from, let's say, that paired t-test, it can help you suggest next steps for modeling. And those are just some of the common uses of statistical analysis uses for LLMs. They can do way more, but as a data scientist, these are things that we would commonly suggest you to use an LLM to help you with in your statistical analysis. So now we'll go over some of the current LLMs that are popular, allowed and not allowed on campus, and we'll look into the pros and the cons of each of them. So we've got some that are allowed on campus and some that are not allowed on campus. We got an email about a couple of weeks ago stating that if you are using ETSU Wi-Fi, you're no longer allowed to use DeepSeek or Manus, I think that's how it's pronounced. And so if you're using the Wi-Fi, you can't use those, but you can use ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Claude, and Google Gemini. And these are some of the 4 most popular ones already that people use everywhere. And so we'll go over the pros and cons of each of those ones you can use on campus. And I will say that I'm not advocating for or not advocating for the use of DeepSeek or Manus, but if you're going to use them, then you have to use them on your own Wi-Fi network. All right, so looking at the pros and the cons of those LLMs that we can use on campus, I'll first go over ChatGPT because that's the most popular one. ChatGPT is really well-rounded. It's easy to have a conversation with, and it knows a lot about many topics. That's why a lot of people like using it. And one of the unique features of ChatGPT is that it has conversational memory. So if you tell it to remember maybe the output from a test that you gave it, it can remember the output of that test. And so the pricing, they have a few tiers. For the personal accounts, the first one is free. And this is where I suggest everyone start just to see if you like using it or it would be useful in your statistical analysis. And then they have the Plus, which is $20 a month. I can speak on the Plus. I really enjoy it. I believe that the Plus has a few more features that the free version doesn't have. It allows you to upload photos. And so where I was talking about the interpretation of plots, that is something that you could use the plus version for. And it allows for a few other things that we'll touch on a little bit. And then there's also the Pro. It is $200 a month. I do not know a lot of the, not really sure about the big difference between the Pro and the Plus. But I'm sure it's useful for someone, maybe especially if you're using it every day for some type of job or for something. But I can say that Plus is definitely worth it, and it's you should look into it if you are using the free a lot. Because sometimes I found with the free, you have conversational limits, so it'll cut you off after so long. But with the plus, it's increased a little bit. So it takes a lot longer for you to be cut off from having a conversation with ChatGPT. The next one is Microsoft Copilot. So it's best for productivity and office integration because it's a Microsoft product. It's also really good for like helping you write code. That's what a lot of people use Copilot for. And it's free for Microsoft users, but also if you are a student on campus, you get a free account as well. And I believe that there is a difference between the base free account and the student free account. So then we'll move on to Claude and Google Gemini. These are some that I have used in the past. Claude is okay. I like it. It's best for ethical and safe conversations. Claude is, it's not as popular, I would say, but it definitely has its pros. And so like I said, it's best for ethical and safe conversations, but if you're already using like practicing good best practices for prompting LLMs, then you should already not be inputting anything that would be like private data or anything like that. But if that's of interest to you, then maybe check out Claude if you'd like extra security. And so for Claude, there are different tiers as well. There's the free account, and then there's the Pro, which also costs the same as Plus for ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. And there's also the Google Gemini. It's good for Google ecosystem integration. And one of the unique features about Google Gemini is the fact that it can do real-time data access, while the others, it's kind of limited or it can't. And I believe that Google Gemini, it's not in its beta version, but it's kind of new. So not a lot is known about how well it performs yet. But the initial price is free, and a bump up from that is to be announced because they're still kind of working on it. There's a product from Google Gemini that I have used, and it's called Notebook LLM, or at least I believe it's tied to that. And Notebook LLM is really good because it allows you to upload PDFs, and like it helps you create study plans. You can even upload PDFs, and it can create a unique podcast to help you understand a concept that's really complicated. And so then, like I said, whether you use the paid or the non-paid will make a difference in the usefulness of the LLM and the features that it has. Definitely start with the non-paid, see how you like it, and then maybe upgrade. The conversation limits, they both have them, but when I upgraded to Plus, I didn't expect there to be a conversation limit, but there is still a conversation limit with ChatGPT Plus. So just keep that in mind, but it is increased from the non-paid to the paid. And in my opinion, ChatGPT is the most well-rounded compared to the others. It's good at coding. It's good at having conversations. It knows a lot about a lot of things. So I would probably start there if you haven't used any LLMs in the past to help you with your statistical analysis. And then lastly, I mentioned that Microsoft Copilot is really good for helping you with coding. But if you're a student, you can get a GitHub account. And with that, you can enable, like if you're using VS Code, you can enable the GitHub Copilot code completion. And it's another kind of AI tool that, like if you're writing code and you forgot the syntax again, then you could just press tab and it would suggest the code that it thinks would be the most useful based on that next word modeling. And so even if you're using this, you need to double check your code and make sure it's working correctly. But it is really helpful and I suggest you check it out. So those are just some of the pros and the cons of the popular LLMs that are out today. And I'll hand it over to Princess to go over a little bit more about them.
Thank you, Taylor. So we'll continue by looking at some features of ChatGPT. So in case you've explored the free version of ChatGPT and you feel like, well, you want to upgrade to the Plus version, it can help with a lot of things. So right here, you see the search. There's an arrow pointing to the search, which helps with current research or current search. So ChatGPT has a cutoff date. So in case you want to search for information or just a normal search on recent data, you can use the search button. So you can also explore the deep research button as well. And for research and analysis, in case you have a research topic and then you want to explore articles relating to that specific research topic, we have the Scholar GPT, and we also have the data analysis and reports AI. These are very nice features that you can explore in ChatGPT Plus. So now I want to look at some good prompting practices that LLMs can help you to do. But before I go on to that, I want to re-emphasize that LLMs, you shouldn't over-rely on LLMs because, I mean, your brain can do a lot more than LLMs can, and LLMs cannot read your mind. So here are some good prompting practices. We recommend that you be as specific as possible when prompting LLMs to ensure that you get optimal response. And it's also best to state the goal of your study or problem. We also recommend that you specify all the variables, if not all, most of the variables in your data set, and then what formats that they come in, whether they come in numerical or categorical form. And another one is for statistical analysis. We advise that you type something along the lines of, you are an expert in statistical analysis using SPSS or maybe R or Python before you type your actual question. And just as we said, with LLMs, it's more like you're having a conversation with them. So you need to set a scene for your LLM. So now let's take a look at some good example prompts. For this, we used ChatGPT. So let's say that you already have a data set, and then you also have your study aim, but you are not certain about how to begin your analysis. This is a very good example prompt, and I'll just read it out for you. So it says, we are interested in seeing how a fish's species and other physical characteristics, that is length 1, length 2, length 3, height, and then width, contributes to a fish's weight. The end goal is to have a predictive model that takes those characteristics into account to predict the weight. The data set is attached to this message. Let's say that you are an expert in using Python for statistical analysis. This fact will contribute greatly to your successful walkthrough of this analysis. All variables are numerical except for species. Can you please walk me through every suggested step of this statistical analysis so that I have an idea of where to start with my own? This includes data cleaning, all pre-processing, statistical tests for assumptions, and modeling. Thank you. So you can see that this is a very good example prompt because it states the format that the variables come in. So it says all variables are numerical. And it also started with, we are interested in seeing how efficient species, giving an idea of what information you want to, or what kind of recommendations you want from the LLM. So maybe a bad example prompt would be if you don't state the form the variables come in, or you probably don't ask for suggestions in terms of what kind of statistical analysis you want to do. That would be a bad example prompt. So let's look at another good example prompt. So with the first one, you were telling the LLM that you have your data, but let's assume that you don't have your data yet, and then you want suggestions on a research and also recommendations on what kind of statistical tests you can do. So I'll read the example. I'm planning a small research project to investigate the relationship between sleep duration and academic performance among college students. I don't have data yet, but I want to know what kind of data I should collect, how many participants I might need, and what statistical methods I could use to analyze the results. I would also like advice on how to control for other variables like caffeine intake, screen time, or course load. Can you help me outline the study design, suggest the types of questions I should include, and recommend appropriate statistical tests? So this is another good example prompt. A bad example prompt from this would be if you only state the first line from I'm planning to among college students. That would be a bad example prompt. And just to re-emphasize again, LLMs can give you recommendation, but you shouldn't over-rely on them because they are not a replacement of your brain. Okay, so we'll stop here and then we'll take any questions that you might have for us. Those online, you can feel free to unmute and ask your question. Okay, so I'll assume that there are no questions for now. But in case you do have questions later on, you can feel free to email us. We'll give you our contact details at the end of the presentation. Okay, so these are some helpful resources on ETSU campus pertaining to statistical analysis. We have the Applied Social Research Lab. That's a helpful resource for survey design, and in case you need help with the data collection, they are the place to go to. We also have our very own Sherrod library, the ETSU library, which is a helpful resource for literature searches. And then from us, the Statistical Consulting Lab, we help with any questions related to statistical analysis. So we've had previous workshops, and we also have an upcoming workshop, the Advanced Statistical Analysis using SAS, and that will be sometime in April. We don't have the exact date yet, but we'll do well to communicate that through email. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for making time today. And these are contact information. That's our email, scl@etsu.edu. And in case you missed this workshop, we do have our YouTube channel where we upload all workshops. Feel free to check that out as well. And we will definitely appreciate your feedback on today's workshop. And so feel free to let us know how it went, what we can do to improve next time, and any other suggestions that you might have. Taylor, do you have anything?
No, thank you all for your time, and we'll stay on for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes if there are any last minute questions. But if you missed anything, check out our YouTube channel. And if you have a question you think of later or you'd like to schedule an appointment, then reach out to us through our email, scl@etsu.edu. So thank you all so much.